Hi, this is Josh Kulp. We are learning Daf Mem Vav. Again, I apologize. We're still catching up on the videos, but we'll get there soon enough. We are learning Daf Mem Vav of Masechet Kiddushin, and I wanted to talk about a biblical verse and another biblical verse that goes along with it that comes up in the beginning of this sugya. And the verse here is from Exodus 22:16. And it comes up in the sugya, we'll get to the verse in a second, about whether a young girl who is married without her father's consent, her father can prevent the marriage. Can she prevent the marriage? After all, on the one hand, she agreed to it. She was a minor, but she agreed to it. On the other hand, she's a minor, and her consent didn't really mean anything. So of course she could disagree with it and annul it. And that's the machlokes between Rav and Rav Asi. Rav Asi says she can't. And we get a kushya on Rav Asi from Rav Huna that he quotes a braita that explains Exodus 22:16. If her father refuses, I only know that her father can refuse the wedding. Where can she refuse it? Refuse the marriage? Talmud Lomar ima'en yima'en mikol makom. Right, the doubling of the verb ma'en, which means to refuse, can implies that either her or her father can refuse. And Rav Huna says this too applies to a case where a girl was nitkadsha, betrothed without her father's consent. Now that actually gets pretty close to what the pshat of these verses are. The verse 22:15 begins, "V'chi yifata ish betula," when a man seduces a virgin, asher lo orasa, who's never been married, who didn't pay the bride price for. V'shachav iman, he sleeps with her, mahorim haren lo isha, he has to pay the traditional bride payment, and then she'll become his wife. Ima'en yima'en aviha letita lo, kesef yishkol kemohar betulat. If her father refuses to give her to him, then the father still gets the same bride price that virgins get. The simple pshat of this is not all that different from what the Gemara is talking about. The simple pshat of this is that a man, and perhaps with the aid of the woman, want to subvert the normal system that was enacted in those days, where a husband first asked a father for permission to marry his daughter. The father would give permission, only then they could get married. These two, or perhaps the man, want to force the father's hand and to force the father to give this girl in marriage, perhaps to get away without a bride payment. That's a little bit unclear. So two things happen. So let's say that they get together and have premarital relations, assumedly with the assumption that they're going to get married. I don't want to talk about like what happens if they didn't want to get married. My assumption here is that the couple, both of them wanted to get married. He has to still pay the same bride price. If, in addition, if the father refuses, he still has to pay the bride price, assumedly because the father will not get the same bride price later on, because she will no longer be a virgin. But it's not really all that far away from what the rabbis are talking about with only with a minor girl, and we're not sure about the age of the girl in this, at least the pshat of Exodus 22. Now, interestingly, Deuteronomy 22, verse 28 and 29, give almost the same scenario. There it reads, Kim sa ish na'ara betula, when a man finds a young virgin girl, asher lo orasa, same words, who has never been betrothed, has not been betrothed, utfasa v'shachav ima v'nimtzao, and he seizes her, or litfasa, and he sleeps with her, and they're caught. Now that word utfasa is interpreted by the rabbis to mean that this case is referring to rape. However, a lot of biblical scholars will tell you that the word v'nimtzao, and they're caught, implies that this is not a case of rape, and that earlier in this same chapter, they use a different word when the Torah wants to refer to rape, in which case this verse and the next verse are also talking about basically the same thing that Exodus 22 is talking about. Rabbis are not going to want to interpret these as talking about the same situation, because otherwise there's superfluity. Rabbis prefer to avoid superfluity, and therefore they say they're talking about two different situations. One is the onus, which is rape, which is Deuteronomy 22, and Exodus 22 is pitui, seduction. But again, that's only a rabbinic interpretation. The Torah there says, "V'natan ha'isha shochev ima le'aviha na'ara chamishim kesef." The man who slept with her, again, not necessarily rape, but the rabbis interpret it as rape, gives her 50 shekel, and she shall stay married to him. Since he, ina here, I would read as slept with her, but the rabbis could also read that as he raped her. Lo yuchal shalcha kol yamav. He can't send her away. Now, again, I want to get back to that issue. Is this rape? In my opinion, it's very problematic for the Torah to say that this woman is stuck with this man her whole life if he raped her. I think that if this is seduction and it subverts the the father's will, that's why he loses the ability to divorce. Still a problematic law, but a little bit, I think, less problematic. Rabbis, there are details in each of these laws that don't appear in the other place. So, for instance, in Exodus talks about the father's right of refusal, and Deuteronomy talks about the issue of 50 shekels and not allowing to divorce. Rabbis are sort of selective in taking the details in one and applying it to the other. So, for instance, they say the father always has the right of divorce, and according to the sugya that we're learning, the girl does as well. 50 shekels is applicable in both situations, and by the way, that's how we get to 200 dinar for a ketubah. It's from the 50 shekels, which is times 4 to make it the equivalent with dinars. The not being allowed to divorce, the rabbis say, is only in the case of rape, and again, only in the case where the daughter and the father want to stay with this man. If they don't, then they still have a right of refusal. A mifateh, a seducer, does not have to stay with the woman for the rest of his life. It's a complicated chapter. It's a complicated comparison. There's a lot of complicated laws. There are whole articles about this issue, and I've only done this in 7 minutes, but it's a very interesting 2 sets of verses to compare, both in the pshat level and how the rabbis interpret them.